the wild yam vine.
Wow, yeah.
It's a beautiful autumn golden color. Just gorgeous leaves. And look at the veining on those leaves. Really
Yeah.
amazing vein. The wild yam root in a tropical area can achieve weights of up to 300 pounds. It's absolutely enormous. Both seeds and roots contain phytosterols. Phyto is a combining form meaning plant, and sterol means hormone. So they're hormones that could be active in any body, but they have to be bioconverted in order to do that. So just eating a root is not necessarily going to give you the hormone, just as eating red clover is not going to, there's no estrogen in red clover, right? Just phytosterols. But back in the 50s, somebody figured out how to do what your gut does in the laboratory. So they used wild yam as source material for phytosterols because it grows so big. Not because there were hormones in the wild yam, but because it was a very plentiful source material, and they were able to make the first birth control pills. So if you heard that birth control pills were made from wild yam, it's kind of true. They were, right? But through a long laboratory process, which is very similar to what goes on in your body. To give you some idea of this, they took 100 women into the laboratory and they fed them a serving of beans. No big deal. We don't know if it was a burrito or a taco, but they fed them a serving of beans. And then they collected their urine. Because when you metabolize phytosterols and turn them into biologically active hormones, certain metabolic byproducts are created, and those are excreted in the urine, so we can actually measure how much of the phytosterols in the beans you converted into active hormones by looking at the amount of these byproducts in your urine. The women were then divided on the basis of this into 4 groups of 25. The 25 lowest excretors, the next 25, the next 25, and then the 25 highest excretors. And then they were followed for a couple of decades. And the 25 who had the highest excretion, the ones who were doing the best bioconversion of phytosterols into hormones, had 400% less breast cancer. They all ate the same serving of beans. But there was a 400% difference between the low excretors and the high excretors. So what happens is you have to have the right gut flora to convert it. It's a fermentation process in your gut, and that's what they did in the lab. He figured out how to do that in the lab. Wild yam is no longer used. Industrial waste is now used. Buckwheat hulls, all right, coffee shells, stuff, that would just be thrown away, that would just be a problem, is now used as the basis because every seed and every root has lots of phytosterols. People say, well, I have a breast cancer diagnosis. I can't drink red clover. I said, yeah, well, you better not eat any corn or any rice or any wheat or carrots or sweet potatoes. And they're like, what? I said, every root and every seed. It's not red clover. And so, right, it's a confusing area, I think, for most people. And especially because a certain lore gets attached to certain plants, like, oh, it's wild yam, like there's some particular thing about wild yam. The particular thing is it just gets a really big root. But sure, pretty plant, isn't it? And then since growing this, I've noticed a couple of places down on the walk to the lighthouse. There's a couple of wild yam vines growing.
Nice.
So I was surprised that it would naturalize in such a cold climate, but that is how lovely. There's the ginkgo tree. It's just starting to turn yellow, right?